Hi, and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson, the Director of Community Outreach for Freshworks, and I am joined, as always, as the doctor.
As the doctor?
I missed a month. It's a little, and I'm joined, as always, by the doctor, Dr. Disruptive Jonathan Yarmis. Welcome, doctor.
Nice to see you, Alan.
We are here the second Friday of every month, and by here I mean we are broadcasting live from Workbench, the enterprise VC in New York City, in beautiful downtown.
I think we're broadcasting live anyhow.
All right, so you're going to see a little bit of behind the scenes.
The joys of, there have been all sorts of weird things going on this morning. So the link not working in certain instances. I'm looking online now and it says live in 31 minutes at noon. And as best I can tell, it is noon. We're showing the broadcast, and you're having the same experience I'm having.
And there's no one connected. So, you know, as Johnny Carson used to say, some you do for yourself. And if you don't know who Johnny Carson is,
Google it. Or ask your parents.
All right, so this is the...
or it might even be grandparents for some people.
Funny story. There's some people working on my house, and they were listening to WCBS FM radio.
Harry Harrison.
Well, now it's I can't remember who it was, but and when I remember growing. So when I was a kid, it would say playing the greatest hits of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and today, right? And it was my parents' music. Well, you know what? Now it's my music. It's playing all the every one song after another comes on. I'm like, oh, I love that song. I miss that song. So I've become the oldie station.
And you tell people to stay off of your lawn.
Stay off my lawn. So Google Johnny Carson. You can see who he is. The great Carnac the Great. So
we've termed this the back to school edition, but I also think it's a very interesting sports time, and we'll take this brief opportunity as
well. We were originally going to title this show the Behaving Badly edition because we're going to talk about a whole bunch of let's call them actors behaving badly.
Well, hence back to school, but it's also we'll take this opportunity, and it's likely the last time this season we Jet fans can laugh at the Patriots. We got a half-game lead on the Patriots, and the Mets have been mathematically eliminated.
From 2018.
Yeah. I suppose they're still alive for the wild card. I think. I know they're...
Yeah, but do they have enough players to field a team?
And you have to have a sense of humor as a fan of the teams Alan and I are a fan of. And just when you think it can't get any stranger, one of the Met players, Wilmer Flores, one of the big emotional heroes, is done for the season. And the reason why he's done for the season, he fouled a ball off his body. Now, oftentimes when a batter does this, they foul it off their foot, they foul it off their leg. No, Wilmer fouled it off his nose and broke his nose. And to compound matters,
not fractures.
Yes. Hence, I chose the word carefully.
Yeah.
They had to reset his nose. The Mets training staff, and I worry about this because the Mets team doctor, Dr. David Altchek, is the one who operated on my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff. And looking at the string of injuries that the Mets have had where recoveries have been incomplete and inadequate gives me grave concern that I'm going to reach to lift something and my shoulder is going to collapse.
Or your arm might just fall off.
That's entirely possible. And,
who was the pitcher whose arm broke?
Oh, yeah.
Trevecki,
Dave Trevecki, was it?
Trevecki,
yeah, maybe. Wow.
One of the most disturbing things. Also, when Jason Kendall, catcher, stepped on first base.
Yeah. Oh. Now.
All right. Now that we've got
and to bring it back and conclude around the Mets theme, Michael Conforto, blows out his shoulder by swinging and missing. swinging at a baseball.
And missing.
Yeah. He didn't fall on it. He didn't do anything. He swung.
Swung.
Swinged
He swanged from tree to tree. All right,
English majors are wincing.
So there is a moderately interesting, very underplayed event that is coming up. May or may not be important.
Apple announcements. It's funny. The world used to revolve around Apple announcements. There's breathless speculation, much of it misplaced, and it gets increasingly accurate as you get close to announcement day. So announcement day is coming up September 12th, and here are the exciting things you need to know about what's coming.
But before you get to that.
No, I'm done.
I totally stole your joke.
No, you teed it up beautifully.
So, they talk about, there was that whole depression or when the stock market crashed, and they talk about when your shoe shine boy is giving you stock advice. And tech rumors used to be the domain of the technorati. There were the insiders. My daughter this morning says to me, Amanda, shout out to Amanda, says to me, Dad, I think I want an iPhone 8. I said, really, why? It's like, because they're putting the headphone jack back. We don't even know if that's true, but she thinks it's true. And the rumor has gotten to the point where my teenage daughter has some perception of this Apple event and what it will.
The challenge for Apple, and this is, let's parameterize this. Apple is an incredible force, right up there with Amazon vying to be the first $1 trillion company and all that. And these are not things that threaten their survival, but absolutely things that eat away at their image. And one of the things, we talked a year ago about the iPhone 7 introduction and basically saying this was a placeholder, right? That they were saving all the good stuff for the 8. Now we're here with the 8, and what's the good stuff? Maybe an edge-to-edge screen. Okay, other people have had that for years. Whether or not they put the headphone jack back, wireless charging that's existed for multiple years. There's nothing here that would cause you to rush out and go buy it. And the stock market prognosticators who always look at this stuff, have some cautionary signs. They're basically saying that there may not be the pent-up demand that we thought about. When the iPhone 7 had somewhat disappointing sales, it was like, okay, but this is setting up a blockbuster 8 introduction. And there may be several reasons why it's not so blockbuster. Reason number 1, lack of compelling features. Reason number 2, there may be some shortages. The high-res screen, the AMOLED screen that they're getting from, ironically, Samsung, may be in short supply. I'm sure the conspiracy theorists will say Samsung is doing things so that their Note 8, which was just introduced to good reviews, has a little more runway. I don't believe that for a moment, and Samsung needs all the help it can get. Although having a distraction, I'm sure the Note 8, the most salient feature about the introduction of the Note 8 has nothing to do with any of its features and everything to do with waiting to see if they'll spontaneously combust.
No, I think they actually made it into a feature. There's a switch. You can actually control it, so you can automate the combustion.
Yeah, and it's good coming into the autumn season, some brisk mornings here in the Northeast.
Oh, it's a little cold. Can somebody turn on your Note? And yet I know lots of people who are waiting for the Note, that they're excited for it to have an updated version of that.
I'm one of those, that the notion of what they call the phablet, the cross between a phone and a tablet, is great screen resolution, size is a wonderful thing, especially when you're consuming increasing amounts of video content.
Well, and the question, I'm just thinking about for myself, because one of the things you wrote down here was the price, and that there's this large price associated with it. But it comes, and that's more than I would spend on a desktop computer. or maybe even a laptop computer. But how much time do I spend on that device?
Right, and we're talking about the iPhone. The rumors are the price unsubsidized could be as much as $1,000 or more. And when you think about it, we've actually always paid a lot of money for our mobile devices, but with subsidies and so on, the real price of the device was at some degree hidden from us. It's now more visible, but we've always paid for things like miniaturization. That's why laptops were always more expensive than desktops. To do everything you need to do in a bigger device, in a smaller device, requires more technology, and more technology comes with it greater expense. And so it's not surprising that we're spending this much on our mobile devices, which are really, incredibly full function these days.
So I'm not. You're a no for an iPhone 8. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, longtime viewers of this show know I own nothing Apple.
And I've got a mix. We are broadcasting on a MacBook. I've got my iPhone, but my everyday desktop is a Windows 10 machine, which I need to replace. If you guys got any tips, just tweet them out, PM Disrupt. I'm looking for a new desktop. All right. Moving on to children behaving badly. And we use the term children metaphorically, but
well, we're old enough that Trevor Kalanick could be at least my child.
You've heard it here first. Now rumors are going to start.
That was an age statement, not a DNA related.
Although we'll talk about that later.
Yes,
maybe we never know.
Yeah, it's amazing the way we weave everything together.
Yeah.
But Uber, it used to be the fun in, and I use that term advisedly, in corporate watching were people like Yahoo and HP, who had incredible board dysfunction that impacted their businesses.
And we've talked about HP a lot here, not as much. Well, Yahoo to a certain extent.
Yes, and Yahoo several years ago when they actually existed as Yahoo and were relevant.
I bet you if you ask people what Yahoo does, most of them would say they run sports leagues.
Right. And there are a few of us who still occasionally look at my Yahoo page because I haven't found anything to replace it. Google gave up on its efforts, and Yahoo still soldiers on.
Your homepage for the internet.
Yes. It was after AOL, which was your training wheels to the internet.
No, AOL was the internet for a lot of people.
So anyhow, Uber, new CEO, and they chose an interesting one with all the big profile names being rumored, Jeff Immelt and Meg Whitman and so on. They came up with Dana Khosrow. I'm still not sure how to pronounce it, but like Khosrowshahi, the former CEO.
Dara or Dana?
Dara, I'm sorry. Did I say Dana?
You said Dana.
Dara.
All right, that's disruptive too.
Of all the names, given that name, I get the first name wrong.
Right. We apologies.
Yes. Anyhow, comes from a strong pedigree from Expedia, which showed considerable growth and a very tech-savvy business. So it may not be
global footprint.
Yeah, it may not be the
travel
sexy
space,
name, but it's something a divided, fractured board was able to unify. It's also one of those things where I dare say some of the candidates who I'm sure were being considered for the job and might have even been lobbying for the job looked at a dysfunctional board, looked at a disgraced CEO who is still in a significant position on the board and otherwise to influence the direction of the company, and said, is this really what I want to do? In fact, Travis Kalanick's been talking a lot about a Steve Jobsian return to the business. So if you're a CEO who the former disgraced CEO, even before you're in the seat, is indicating that you're a caretaker. You know,
right.
It's one of those, I hope Dara got a lot of incentives up front, strong vesting schedule, so that when they actually have further board dysfunction, that they can walk away and say, well, at least I got paid well.
Right.
And at the same time, they're inheriting a really messy situation.
I mean, you have a laundry list here of just what's happened recently.
Yes, you know, that there are countries that are shutting them down or otherwise curtailing their business operations and creating opportunities for other reinvigorated players like Lyft and a number of other countries, strong local and regional players. So the competition is growing and emboldening.
So where they're getting shut down, it's not the general objection to ride sharing, but it's Uber's practices.
And I would say related to that, some of the people who are objecting to Uber, I think, are instances of, methinks the lady doth protest too much, that they're not philosophically opposed to it. They just want to get their piece of the pie.
Right.
You know, and
it's Uber, a negotiating tactic.
Yes, and okay. You know, Uber was aggressive in saying we are going to do it with or without you, daring them to be challenged and discovering that maybe that was a foolish approach to things, and that those who cooperate with the authorities can gain a significant foothold. So
I think that's a larger story for what is, I don't like the term sharing economy, but for those companies that are in the similar space, there's a lot, you're operating where there are very few rules or precedent.
And you contrast what Uber has done with what Airbnb is doing, where they're working much more with regulatory authorities to address concerns rather than a defiant, we dare you to shut us down.
Yeah, and Airbnb has a different model and a different theme. Jonathan Mildenhall, who's the CMO for Airbnb, is brilliant. He came from Coca-Cola, and I'm a big fan. So that's a better story. But Uber continues to act badly.
No, and just this morning was announced.
Should I say behave badly?
Yes. And just this morning it was announced that the FBI is looking into a practice that Uber is no longer doing, but one where they were spying on their drivers. Many drivers have relationships with both Uber and Lyft here in North America. And Uber wanted to look at those drivers who were double dipping, if you will, and try and might penalize them, get them to do more work with Uber and less with Lyft. And what they were doing is, theoretically, when you completed your ride, that shut off Uber's tracking of you. But Uber said, no, you know, we'll leave it running for a little longer and see what's going on here. And they did the same thing with passengers. And you start thinking about the information that could provide. You know, on the one hand, you might say, wow, it gives us valuable insights into how to better service these people. At the same time, it could also give you valuable insights into the activities those people are doing for which Uber has no legitimate business
interest.
And
when you talk about machine learning algorithms where you can fill in the blanks, and that, I mean, that's really what you're there for, to take that big data and say, what could possibly be going on? So there's a lot, and we'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, but Uber was just overstepping its bounds. You know, that in its efforts to obtain more information, they were doing things at best surreptitiously, at worst actionable.
This is not just Uber, though.
Oh, no.
What was I think it was AccuWeather.
Yes.
Was that the app? I think
yes.
It was AccuWeather.
Yes.
The app was tracking people.
Yes.
And because there's no precedent.
And they were tracking people, not, you know, because there's a legitimate reason. When you fire up your AccuWeather app, you want the weather where you are and not where you live. But what they were doing was continuing to track you after you shut the app off.
So they had, right.
Again, no legitimate reason other than their selfish information gathering efforts, that it in no way, shape, or form gave you value. And as one of our recurring themes is, I'll take lots of things for free, and share information with you because that's a reasonable value exchange. And they were way over the boundary of an informed value exchange.
And that's a theme we've been talking about for many years here. And in terms of what we're purchasing or the value we think we're getting out of a particular app is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the ultimate impact, both on us and on the vendor collecting the app or collecting the data. There's going to be data, that data is going to be sold or monetized in a way that is not related to the fact that I know that it's going to be sunny and 72 degrees.
Right. And the monetization, again, we had another one, I may even have it here, where somebody was sharing information with their monetization app that was stuff that you had not explicitly agreed to.
So what if I just open source my location?
Well,
and then nobody can pay for it.
Well, at some point we're getting into VRM, which is one of those technology areas, vendor relationship management, that kind of flips CRM, customer relationship management, on its head.
If anybody out there has a VRM idea that they want to pitch, we're certainly happy to hear that. We've been talking about that for many years.
Many years.
It's hard to sell something to consumers. And so the question is, how do you make it? And it's just does it end up being an open source type of a function, a Linux?
Or let's make an explicit value exchange. Right now it's kind of implicit, or I get the app for free, you get some data, but it's ill-defined. There are no penalties on the vendor side. There's no ownership really on the user side. I mean, one of the things I still chuckle about, the number of photo sharing apps where people post a notice that say, you can't share this app, I do not give you permission to share this picture anywhere, and it will be considered a violation of some federal code and the Rome Act. And if only by posting notices like that, we can legally amend agreements to which we've already clicked, I agree. It doesn't work that way. But perhaps we need something that lets us more explicitly understand the contractual terms, the value exchange that's taking place, and gives us some ability to control and revoke.
There is if you pick up an item in the supermarket, it says the ingredients and it has nutritional information. That wasn't always there. And maybe it has to be that's very clear when you click before you click that, what are you giving and what and what are you getting?
Yes, and I'm sure the current government climate will no doubt focus on that.
And so moving on, speaking of data.
Come on, we went a long way before I made some snarky government comment.
Yes. So talking about data, let's talk about computers behaving badly. This first item here, I'm not sure, is that fake news?
No.
No, I know that they had the, why don't you talk about it? Introduce it and then I'll share my thoughts.
Facebook was working on an artificial intelligence algorithm to help it drive better value, better insights into the information it had, and so on. And one of the things it did, there were computers that were designed to share information with each other so that they could get a bigger picture and drive a value. And AI applications, I'm going to be grossly imprecise and inaccurate here, but one of the things they try and do with this is learn so that they can communicate more effectively. Facebook went and shut down this one particular AI effort when they discovered that the computers talking to each other had developed their own language and were communicating with each other in ways that the Facebook engineers didn't fully understand and appreciate. So this has always been one of the, the science fiction things. The computers are going to go rogue, and and are going to go rogue and take over. And
if you ask Elon Musk, he'll say, yeah.
Yeah, there are a variety of technologists who are scared of that kind of thing. And we're getting to a point, I'm sure many of you have heard the term the singularity, and that in effect, again, being grossly imprecise, is when computer knowledge and insight surpasses that of human knowledge and insight. So the computers are smarter than we are. I will resist the snarky comment about intelligence in the world today, but note the fact that there's some really interesting issues around computer learning and so on, and how effective these things can be. And one of the things I've always been less than optimistic about, perhaps the only technology I've ever been less than optimistic, is autonomous cars. That basically say, to get these things to work, the complications of it from a societal perspective, from a legal perspective, from a technology perspective, all of the, from a insurance perspective, all of these things raise a host of issues that I think will increase the challenges down the road. And one of the things that spurred my thinking about it yet again was some researchers designed a hack that basically what happens now, the autonomous cars try and read traffic signs and behave so that when they come up to a stop sign, they know they have to stop. So with materials that any sixth grader could use effectively, and probably younger, they were able to do things to the traffic signs so that the autonomous vehicles would not recognize them. And presumably then you might, I don't recognize it as a stop sign, so I'm going to go barreling through the intersection at full speed. And there's so many.
And they were subtle, meaning it was,
oh yeah.
So it wasn't that, because I saw some of these pictures, it wasn't that they changed it, that it no longer looks like a stop line. To you and I, it still looks like a stop sign.
Right.
But the computer is confused or has doubt or
because we're used to seeing things on a sign and not noticing them. In the Vietnam era, stop signs were routinely festooned with the war. Stop the war. And you almost, when you saw a stop sign that didn't have that, you were tempted to pull over to the side of the road and add it so people would recognize the sign.
You were. I was still playing with my crayons.
Yeah, and I was playing, G.I. Joe came before that. Yeah. Making dolls acceptable to boys.
There you go. Moving on. Adults behaving badly. Okay, you get to talk about government now.
Yes, net neutrality. We talked about that a couple of months back, and basically saying this time it's in trouble. And there have been further troubling signs from the government where they've basically said our comment policy, and all of these draft legislations are open for comment, and everybody was getting ready, as has been the case with previous efforts to repeal net neutrality, just overwhelm the respondents with replies that said, don't you dare touch our net neutrality. So this time, the government learned from its prior failed efforts and said, to allow certain kinds of comments, that who can comment and what they can comment on is going to be bounded. And if 1 million of you say the same thing, we're going to throw out 999,999 of those comments because you're all just saying the same thing. What we're going to do is base it on the merits.
That's saving us money because it uses 0.0000001% less
computing power
and storage. Right?
Yeah, but they're basically saying we are going to rule on the merits of the case and not whether it's popular or good for the respondents. And that's basically their way of saying, okay, we get the objection, we ignore the objection. So I really hate to be a pessimist on this one, because we've discussed the importance of net neutrality and what might change because of it.
So that's where I want you to put your prognosticator hat on right now. If you're a vendor or a startup or someone who's in that space, that bandwidth and access to consumers is part of your business model, doing right now to what can you do to somehow prepare yourself?
Yeah. I think there are two options. Option number one is you need a bigger war chest. That there are things that you assume are not going to be a cost of doing business today that will be a cost of doing business tomorrow. And you either have to get more funding and or scale back some of your development and or marketing initiatives because your cost of doing business is going to be higher. Number two, partnership. That if you don't have the resources, start cozying up to a telco or a cable company or somebody who has the wherewithal to anoint you one of the favored ones. And if we talked about the first one, we're going to increase your costs. In this instance, we're likely to decrease your revenues because you're going to have to share it with somebody who then has sufficient economic incentive to anoint you versus somebody else who might otherwise be in the same business. So the partners are going to get to pick.
But it boils down to the cost of doing business.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you could also go get the Pied Piper technology for video compression. Silicon Valley, the HBO show Silicon Valley had the video.
Yes. I'm sorry.
So, but the bottom line is that there's certain factors that aren't going to change. The amount of bandwidth you consume, that's still maybe one thing that you might have, but that's a big technological challenge.
Yep, and we'll talk about bandwidth and cost thereof later, but and I think pivoting into this about big tech vendors behaving badly.
Considering with our theme of behaving badly, vendors behaving badly.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that will come out of this, there's been a not so subtle change in the attitude toward the big tech vendors. If before they were our heroes, providing robust economies, creating new opportunities and those kinds of things, it's now easy to point at them and say they're doing bad things and channel your Donald Trump voice when thinking about this one, but it makes an easy target. And so, for instance, one of the ways I'm sure the net neutrality argument will get sold is the simplistic Netflix is behaving badly. Because Netflix is using this huge amount of bandwidth for which they're not paying. Shouldn't they be made to pay for what they're getting here? And on the surface of things, it sounds like it's a reasonable approach.
Right.
Similarly, Facebook is doing things that are invading our privacy, and whether it's legitimate concerns, whether it's Facebook is, Mark Zuckerberg sure sounds like he's girding for the next presidential election, but they make easy targets that when we're in an enthusiastic growth mode, wow, look at the great things they're doing. They're changing the way we communicate. They're making a difference in the world. When the climate changes and all of a sudden we look at the same behaviors through a different lens, it's Google is favoring its services to the dismay of others. Amazon is crushing, with the Whole Foods acquisition, yet another industry where people who have legitimate businesses and pay taxes, are being hurt by this.
They've also made some changes to their independent seller agreements.
Mm-hmm. And so you can look at the great services they provide, or you can say they're a rapacious competitor, and there is a distinct climate change that is looking at the mega vendors that were our champions 1, 2, 3 years ago, now into villains who are doing things that are landing them multi-billion-dollar fines and information disclosure breaches and the like. And we just saw another one yesterday, Equifax. Everyone to me, because
there's a couple of elements to this that are troubling. One of that, you start with the fact that the timing. They waited a month. So well, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, Equifax. There's a 1 in 2 chance if you're American watching this. There's a 1 in 2 chance that some of your information was disclosed. Now,
more than 1 in 2, because they only have credit information on people who are over the age of 18.
Okay, but I said that if you're an American. So if you want to narrow it down to over 18, we're a family safe show, that we might have some young viewers. But 143 million of you have had information disclosed. More troubling is several 100,000 of them included things like social security number and driver's license number. The social security number one is a gruesome, I mean, if they steal your password, hopefully you've got good password hygiene and you don't use the same password or variations of it on multiple.
Two-factor authentication,
yeah.
or
there are ways that you can reasonably protect yourself against that one. Social security number is a bad one because they can open bank accounts in your name. There are a bunch of things that somebody with a modicum of skills can take those numbers and do bad things that may not cost you money, because in the long run you'll be able to recoup some amount of it and so on. But boy, the inconvenience of it, the time you'll need to spend remediating the problem all over the place is terrible. Now, there are several other problems with this Equifax situation that make it, again, vendors behaving badly and making them an easy target. Number one, here we are, it's mid-September. This was discovered in late July. So it's about 6 weeks from identifying it to disclosing it, which means you've been exposed for that period of time. Number two, there are several senior managers who sold Equifax stock before the news was disclosed. Now, we'll see how the courts resolve this one. They're maintaining it's purely a coincidence. I'm not a big believer in coincidence. So maybe they behaved badly at an individual level. Why didn't the company have?
And to be clear, the stock dropped 13%.
Yeah.
On the announcement.
So we're talking real money. Then one of the things, Equifax seems to have made a magnanimous gesture. If you're one of the 143 million, you can go, they've even got a website, EquifaxSecurity2017.com. Now, I had to laugh at this one. So they did it 2017.com, so they're allowing the fact that there might be security breaches in other years.
I think you should go out and see if the domains were already taken.
Yeah, 2018, 2019, yeah.
No, 2018 first half, 2018 second quarter, third quarter.
Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
May.
But they're making what sounds like a magnanimous effort. They'll give you some level of their service for free. Now, there are so many websites, those pesky little things that come up at the beginning where you click agree to 23 pages of 7 font text, and then go, wow, look at what they're doing. How are they allowed to do this? As well, you clicked agree. Well, one of the things Equifax is doing with this magnanimous offer is you click agree not to participate in a class action lawsuit against them should one be filed about this. I'm of mixed feeling about this one from the perspective, number one, they're trying to hide it, so that's bad. So what's the real impact to you? you've been party to many class action lawsuits before. I've probably been, I don't know, I get these messages regularly, you know, right. Probably hundreds of them over the course of my lifetime. I think I got $20 from Amazon. And that probably represents the total sum of the benefit I've received from participating in class action lawsuits. The lawyers get millions, the rationale being they're doing all this work to punish the vendors so that they'll be less inclined to do it the next time. And so therefore they get all of their money off the top, and what's left over can be distributed to the claimants. So you sign away your rights, and what were you going to get from Equifax?
Class action lawsuit for a breach it's just not going to work. There's no way you can say there was negligence to the point where anybody can be hacked.
And your damages are hard to quantify.
Yeah, that's
you know, so if you want
so the answer is take the LifeLock or whatever it is that they're offering you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you're
$150 value. You know,
you're surrendering some rights. Now the caveat here is we are not lawyers. This is not legal advice. No. If it turns out the claimants in the suit get millions, we did not give you financial advice. We did not recommend that. Consult with your lawyer, your accountant.
Click right here. We're going to put the click right there. You absolve us of
yeah, click. You know, check with your lawyer, your accountant, your mother, your child. Yeah. You know, some authority that has more standing than us.
All right, one more vendor behaving badly, and this is another troubling trend. We've talked about here that you are no longer purchasing products, you are licensing products or renting or whatever term that you buy something and
you don't buy it.
You don't buy it, and you don't own it, and you don't know that you don't own it. So let's talk about Sonos for a minute.
Yeah, Sonos, high end. I guess I can qualify them as a high end.
No, they're high end.
Yeah, audio system that will play internet music and other forms of entertainment throughout your house, is looking to do an upgrade of their terms and conditions. Presumably, and I have not done any legal comparison, but it gives them more rights to do things, to share information, to spy on you, otherwise identify your usage and patterns, so that they can charge you not only for their service, but they can turn around and make themselves more valuable to advertisers and other partners with whom they might want to share information. So they're releasing new terms and conditions, and you might think, okay, I'll click not agree and not do the upgrade. Well, it is possible, if not likely, we'll see if they actually execute against this one, but they may say, you click not agree, okay, guess what? You now have an expensive brick that your device stops working because you didn't agree to the current terms and conditions. The older ones were no longer willing to support, so if you want it, you have to grant us agreement to the terms and conditions.
Right. I got to believe that that's going to be grandfathered to existing owners. Otherwise, that is a class action suit waiting to happen.
Yeah, but some of it, without getting into the details of it, I imagine the technical ability to determine who's grandfathered and how rights pass on. There are probably all sorts of complicated things related to that. If you've got an existing device and you add to it is the new device connected, I mean, there are so many complicated issues. But we've seen instances, there are vendors who have done things badly and have ended up bricking devices as a result. Right. Or in certain instances, the companies have gone out of business and services that worked no longer work because the vendor's not there to support it, even while you would think, I've got a device, it's working today, why isn't it working tomorrow?
With that market is becoming increasingly competitive. The home, Google Home, Amazon, everybody wants that speaker in the house space. I can't imagine that they're going to take a step that's going to put them that much in a non-competitive position. Or they're going to take a step that everybody else is going to say, oh, they did it, we can jump. So I guess that can go.
Well, I've seen some.
I like when I contradict myself in the middle of the sentence.
Well, we choose to do that. Yeah. Two people, three positions.
I was just going to say analysts. Analysts.
Okay.
We can.
But there's a high degree.
We can do
the
both.
Venn diagram.
Venn diagram. Yeah. Okay. Got it. All right. We broadcast from Workbench, which is an enterprise VC, and so we'd like to present, I think, each time with an enterprise insight. And this one actually has been in the works for a long time. I've been hearing about it, and I'm really excited.
We are East Coast Technologists, which is a small but significantly growing category, and there are things you've heard Silicon Alley, but there's so many Silicon this, Silicon that. The New York tech space is continuing to grow, and there is a significant development taking place this month. The opening of Cornell Tech, which is a combination between the City of New York, Cornell, a bunch of other corporate players investing money in there, and it represents a $2 billion investment in, if you're familiar with New York, Roosevelt Island is an island in the East River of Manhattan, between, in the city of New York, between Manhattan, I think it's Queens, on the east side, further up than Brooklyn. But it's a educational campus, something that really attempts to, if New York has had all of the elements to build a strong tech ecosystem. So when you look, what made Silicon Valley a big success? You had a core of educational institutions, you had investment money, you had significant companies located there. New York is, at some level, upping its game in two of those key metrics. The amount of money invested and available, and the strength of the educational ecosystem.
Right, and the education ecosystem provides two things. It provides both the entrepreneurs and also the employees.
Yes. This is a significant step forward. It'll be years, of course, before it's fully realized. But I think if we fast forward 5 or 10 years and look back and say, when did the New York hockey stick do that? This will be one of the seminal events that caused the acceleration of the New York tech ecosystem.
And if anybody associated with the Cornell Tech and is looking for some tech-related programming that they'd like to sponsor, and
we're only here a couple of weeks and already you're flirting with other people.
No, multiple. There's more than one day a month in the calendar.
Yes, and the synergies between what's going on here at Workbench and Cornell Tech are significant. So, I kid you, but yes, if somebody wants to take some of that $2 billion and share it our way, jyarmis@gmail.com.
A better way to put it, and I think this is more sincere, is whatever we can do to help. If there's someone out there that thinks that we can help with that process, yes, we'd love to participate.
And we will go find them too.
Yeah. All right. This just you have to talk about this one, the Microsoft Azure. This was like, really? This is a head scratcher for me.
What's old is new again, or what's new is old again, or something.
Yeah.
Microsoft Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud-based platform, they're really taking it two directions. One, they are trying to make it more directly competitive with Amazon Web Services. So they're doing a variety of things that make it a more direct competitor. And one of the things they're doing that leverages their traditional approach to business and relationship with customers. And one of the strengths of cloud computing is you spin something up, you use it, and when you don't need it, you shut it down, and you only pay for what you need. There are certain, however, base uses for which you're always going to need the instance, and it may be that you've got the appropriate hardware and resources, the specific security or regulatory requirements that you might want to run it on your own premises, divorced from the infrastructure of the cloud provider. Not our job. Whether they get there or not, and there are others who dabble in that space where Amazon lets them do interesting things that create hybrid solutions. But Microsoft is said they're going to let people run Azure on premises, so that if you've got a development underway that, gee, you did it as a pilot in a cloud-based environment, and now that it's going mainstream production, you actually want to take it in-house. Well, the same development effort that let you run it on the cloud, you can now run it on your own infrastructure. Not a terribly sexy thing unless you're an enterprise tech geek like us, in which case, this one was surprising to you.
I'm trying to think of the use cases, but so you've mentioned some of them. It could be about security and privacy and regulatory issues, because I can't see it economically how that
benefits whom? Microsoft?
No, how that benefits somebody. Am I going to be able to run a data center, an Azure data center, cheaper than Microsoft can run an Azure data center?
Yes, because you've all, when you run it on Microsoft's premise, you are paying them for the software and the hardware. Yeah. If you've already got embedded infrastructure and you just layer this on.
Scale, I think of the scale and what that. I'm going to have to look at that one.
This isn't a sea change, but we've talked. Whenever we talk about cloud computing, distinctions about it. Are we going to have public clouds, private clouds, or hybrid clouds?
I hope Esteban Kolsky's not listening, because he would just be vomiting all over the place right now with that statement.
No, it's well, you're right, but that's Esteban. So those of you who don't know, you've got choices about how you run your infrastructure, and the holy grail, which some vendors have bet on and not realize the full value of, and Microsoft's another player making the bet here, is that people really want a hybrid approach. They want some stuff in the cloud, they want some stuff on premises.
Speaking as an enterprise vendor, I'll put my vendor shirt on for 1 minute, and we see that all the time. That's still a concern. Some stuff's in the cloud, but some stuff we want on premise. We have the investment in our data centers. We've capitalized. We've already built it. It's there. We've got the infrastructure, the people in place. Let's use it. So that to me, that's why I have to think that through. But that's fascinating. All right, let's get some quick bites. We can talk about interesting uses of Apple technology.
We've always been wondering what the killer app for a watch is, for a smartwatch.
Yep.
The Yankees discovered that the Red Sox had found the app, and it was signal stealing in baseball. That there's always this cat and mouse game between the pitcher and the batter. What pitch am I going to throw? And if the batter knows what's coming, it increases their likelihood of getting a hit. The biggest example of this was perhaps the most famous home run in the history of baseball, Bobby Thompson's home run in 1951 for the Giants to beat the Dodgers. The Giants win the pennant. And one of perhaps the most famous call in all of baseball, short of Gary Cohen calling Bartolo Colon's home run. We can argue which one's more important. But the Red Sox were accused of using a smartwatch to convey information into the dugout that they could then convey to the batter so they'd know what pitch was coming.
Lovely. All right. The next quick bite. I remember when I worked on Wall Street. This is circa. I always try to figure out what the date was, but it was probably 1989, 88, 89. Sun Microsystems delivered. I remember seeing these guys working on. I think this was all. It was all about IBM PCs. It wasn't even like that much. And I guess we had compact servers. No, there wasn't even. Was there even Windows? It was 3.1. Right?
Yeah.
There wasn't even Windows Server yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and Sun Microsystems decided to just deliver millions of dollars worth of hardware to Wall Street and just said, we're not going to bill you for it now, just use it. And that began a decades-long trend of Wall Street running on Sun.
28 years. That was 89.
And Oracle, because it's not even Sun anymore. Yeah. Sun is part of Oracle. Oracle just decided that that run is coming to an end.
They laid off 90% of the staff, and So you may have heard the term Spark, which was the RISC-based processor that powered the Sun workstations, and Solaris, their version of Unix, that was the software that ran the system. And Oracle will no longer be developing for either platform. The hardware is what it is, whatever exists, exists, but there's going to be no further advances. And I imagine there will be some software maintenance, because to abandon the platform, and so much of the internet has and likely still runs on Sun servers, that they'll probably continue to do security patches and the like, but new functions, new developments on the Solaris platform.
But it's just amazing that this is the trend in tech. Something that was once dominant, it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned the name Compact.
Right. Compact was the gold standard for servers.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do this one with for another quick bite, and then because we're running out of time here.
23andMe. So you talk about valuable data. 23andMe
is a scary one, John.
Yeah. You can send in, basically you spit into a vial, send it off to them, and they come back with a DNA analysis that says, here's what your genetic makeup is, what regions of the world we identify through your DNA threads. Think about the value of that information. And I will admit that whether it was certainly a spur of the moment purchase, it was like a Groupon of a DNA analysis. And I said, cool, I've always been curious. I joke with my,
that's how they get you.
Yeah, well,
I'm curious.
For a long time, I've joked with my mother. So tell me about the milkman. I'm just different than the rest of the family. Don't go there. And I decided, okay, let's see. And what I've now done is, even while I said, no, you can't share this information, they now have my DNA information and the DNA information, I imagine, of millions of people, and the things that insurance companies could do with that information, governments could do, all sorts of players in the system. And there is enough interest in what they're doing and the potential value they can extract from it beyond the whatever was $75 I paid, that people last week invested $200 million in that.
That is a drop in the bucket as to what that information is worth.
And if you think, when people invest the kinds of returns they're looking for successes, I don't know, what are they looking for, 20x their money? They're basically saying, with this round of funding, it values the company and what they hope to get out of it as a $4 billion company. Significant, and should cause, on the one hand, I'm really interested in what the information can tell me, and there's useful information, diseases and other things that you might be genetically predisposed to.
But then the insurance companies get their hands on it, and all sorts of
the information's out in the wild.
All right, let's do a pet peeve, an interesting factoid, and a shame on you in a quarter of the month, and we have about 2 minutes.
Well, pet peeve, and we said interesting things about Microsoft. They're rolling out a new update to Windows 10. All I can say is be careful, save your work frequently, allow time to leave the office because you're going to get that
Don't shut down your computer unless you got a little time on your hands. That's all we're saying. All right, interesting factoid. How about the Netflix one?
Their viewership. How do they make their money? The subscriptions and showing growth in hours. Next quarterly results are probably going to show that consumption of video was down, because during the eclipse, there was 10% fewer Netflix viewership. People were outside looking through their glasses. Talk about a one-time business selling to be able to look at.
And they didn't even have to work. All right, shame on you.
Shame on you. It's always fun to beat on the telcos. Yeah. And one of my favorite whipping posts, Verizon. I might have even given them kudos a couple of months ago. they introduced what seemed to be a reasonably favorable unlimited data plan.
A little more pricey than their competitors, but it was there.
Yeah, and it had relatively reasonable restrictions, with the net result being a whole bunch of us signed up for it, and they said, oh my God, look at the impact it's having on our network. We can't let this happen. So if you didn't get it already, the new unlimited plans, unlimited, that they'll start throttling bandwidth after certain amounts of consumption, and certain things are going to throttle the bandwidth right from the beginning. You won't be able to get full resolution.
And this story is not over, so stay tuned on that. All right, quarter of the month. This is from a high school student.
Yeah. It's back to school time.
This is our back to school edition
of 2 high school kids.
And on this show, we try to help you live your life better in a digital society. Yeah, that's our theme, right?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. This is from Anthony Chiavetti. He's a high school student in Missouri. He said, "The need to know the capital of Florida died when my phone learned the answer. Rather, the students of tomorrow need to be able to think creatively. They will need to learn on their own, adapt to new challenges, and innovate on the fly."
Tallahassee. I didn't even look at my phone.
On that note, thank you for joining us for Pardon My Disruption. Alan Berkson, the doctor, Dr. Jonathan Yarmis. We're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on October 13th. Join us as we continue to talk about what's going on and the trends in technology. And I still need a good sign off.
Cornell Tech, call us.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time.